Yeah, it certainly, I remember when we were doing, I think it was Revelation of the Daleks, we had to, Simon Graham came down on the floor and said, right, he said, we've got 20 minutes to get these last two scenes in, because otherwise they just turn the lights out on the dot, bang, you've got each dot. That did happen.
I mean, the BBC is a completely different program from what we're used to in the United States. Because you are getting that money through subscriptions rather than commercials, you are limited with limited in sort of the budget, and so you have to definitely, I think the producers are probably going to have to be real tight on those, so it makes sense. I feel like you were about to say something, Michael. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what did you just say about rehearsals? What do you mean?
Rehearsals or when they turn the lights out during rehearsals, or during recording?
Yeah, but the trouble is that compared to stage, if you get somebody who goes wrong, and it happened once with a guy called Ian Holm who was playing Henry V. There was an American on the front row kept taking photographs of him, and he said, which was illegal even in those days. He said, if he does that again, I'm going to throw my sword at him. So it came to the Crispin's Day speech, and he said to this American, he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. And this American didn't take any more photographs, and he was wheeled out. For Ian. Now, Ian, and if you go wrong on stage, you can pick up, I've seen the most amazing performances, and I've seen people go wrong on television, and if they would just allow that and then pick up later, they take off, but no, they've got to stop it. And
kills the energy, right? Kills the momentum.
Yeah, it's the other thing that I always noticed with television as well is that, yeah, they'll call it a pickup shot, so everything may have gone great in the scene, but there's possibly one thing that they wanted to tweak, and they'll say, oh, we'll just pick up that line. And for an actor, you want to be immersed in the moment. So just to kind of deliver one line without the rest of the sentence.
No, but I found that in those days you used to do a thing, and you do a first shot of everybody, and then you do so and so, and at that time and time again I've seen right at the end we've got call the half. We've got half an hour to go. And that's when the main actor or actress has to do his best speech. They've done all the original shots of the close-ups of everybody, and suddenly, right at the end of the day, he's got to do it when he's tired out. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. You've got very good actors thinking, oh, we're going to go over. When we go over, you have to pay all the unions overtime. The unions actually, well, messed it up really. So you can't do that, you can't do this.
I mean, we do have unions in the United States, but it does sound like it's different the way the BBC had it. We did have a hand with a question, so go ahead.
Yeah, just John, just getting back to the rehearsal thing. When you getting into a new creature, a new monster, etc. You showed some video of this yesterday, but how much time did they give you to learn how to move and walk and maneuver these things?
It does vary. I suppose it's all down to that at the end of the day. It's like, well, we could save money and then have something on screen that doesn't look as good. It is show business. Yeah, so if we're lucky, we'll get a day with the choreographer going over the movement. But a case in point was the Maya from the Girl Who Died episode. They had to actually build those costumes in 2 weeks, 5 of those costumes in 2 weeks. One thing and another, the original designs came out, and then it took 3 weeks for everybody to look at the designs, change the designs. It's called justifying your justifying your job. And then what happened was, at the end of 3 weeks, they go, oh, we'll just do the original design. And you've got 2 weeks to do it. So Millennium Effects went flat out to make these things, and they literally finished them on the day of shooting. We turned up and we had probably an hour or two to get used to the costumes. Elsa Burke, the choreographer, was there. We got some movements done, and then literally we were straight on camera straight away. I think some of the costumes, yeah, we had literally no time to actually rehearse. Well, and can't talk about that until a year's time.
Join us for
yeah, but
2022.
The thing is, though, it's one of those things. I'm always fascinated that it's even possible to make a television program or a movie because there's so many moving parts. It's a miracle anything ever gets done. It's not like literally everything is planned out and you go, oh, this is there. Everything is constantly moving and changing. For example, if somebody's costume breaks, it's like, well, we can't film. We've got to repair the costume. Okay, what can we do in the meantime? Well, we'll try and get these shots where you can't see the costume. So it's a kind of ever-evolving creature that it's like wrestling Jello. This and like the end of the day, oh,
I didn't
I didn't break it. So, you know, at the same time, you know, people go, well, why didn't they do this? And why is that there? And a lot of the time is because literally you're just constantly problem solving, just trying to get the thing actually made.
I bet you they had duct tape in every color.
Oh, well, funny you should say that. The Cybermen from Series 2 that we did, the heads clipped together and there were these like metal kind of suitcase
latches?
Latches, yeah, that would click it together and then to get us out they'd have to put a pin in and it pops apart. But eventually these things wore down and they literally just put strips of silver duct tape that actually held it. It was a zip ties and duct tape. So if you look very closely, you know, you possibly could actually see that. But again, it's like, well, you know, the show must go on. How do we solve this?
They weren't upgraded.
No, the new ones are a lot better. They do, I think they kind of clip together and then they kind of, they do that.
So
hopefully
I want to go back a little bit. Give me 1 second. I just want to go back because we're talking about, the reason I asked about if you grew up watching the BBC, I'm very curious to what your first job at the BBC was and what that sort of impact had to go from watching something to being a part of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. From watching it to say, yeah, what's it like from watching it to actually be there on something that you've been watching? Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. Well, yeah. I suppose the biggest impression. I did a couple of tellies in the day. I've been an actor now for in excess of 60 years, and I know I don't look it. But my first real taste of the BBC, I was cast as Pip in Great Expectations, and we had to do what then was called Telecine, and we went and filmed all the exterior shots, and they were then dropped in during the show. So, you know, as I said last year, we're coming to Telecine in 1, 2, 3, and they put the film bit on, so you walk through a door in the studio, and then they cut to you coming out of a door, filmed in wherever it was. So that was another thing that you had to sort of contend with, and that was live. And I was playing the lead in this, live every Sunday evening, and that was my biggest foray into my biggest shock when I first went to the BBC, and we had rehearsals for it.
My first television was when I was still at drama school, and I had a tiny part with Barbara Rush and Patrick Allen. Barbara Rush did a lot of horror films. She was playing, I think it was Barbara Rush, and Patrick Allen, who started his own voiceover studios. And I had the part of an intense young man who was a film buff. And the BBC at that time had a very strict thing about what you could or couldn't say. And I had to say to somebody, well, Eisenstein, the great Russian film director, did this particular shot through the Admiral's crutch. The thing came back, you can't say crutch. I thought, why not? And this was 1962. So I had to say, Eisenstein, the great film director, did this shot round the Admiral's elbow. It didn't make any sense, really.
Old Admiral's elbow, eh?
Sounds like a dance step.
Sounds like code.
So how about you, John? First stop at BBC?
I'm trying to think if I really did anything before Doctor Who.
About 35 years later.
Yeah, fast
Did Doctor what?
Well, I grew up watching Doctor Who as a child, in black and white, obviously, which was absolutely fantastic. You know, Tom and Peter's mainly, and then Series 1 with Chris came out of Doctor Who, and it's like, oh wow, Doctor Who's back again. So when I basically did the rehearsal and then was told, yeah, this is going to be for Doctor Who, it was literally the child inside of me was like, oh, please, 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 please. And then when I got the call, tried the costume on, and it fitted, and then my very first day on set, it was just the best feeling ever. That not only am I on a major TV programme, that I'm on this programme that I absolutely loved as a child.
Yeah. BBC.
No, Barbara Shelley. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
She was in horror films. Barbara Shelley. She died about 2 weeks ago, actually. Barbara Shelley, you know her?
No.
Well, she didn't. She was connected with Doctor Who for tiny. Yeah, anyway.
Look,
It was in there somewhere,
Your
wasn't it,
homework
Michael?
for tonight, look up Barbara Shelley. Yeah, sorry, you had a question.
Getting to the theme of this, in the 1980s, especially on Doctor Who, was the change in structure of the storytelling from serialized stories to more or less standalone episodes that were double the length. What was behind, if you know, the decision to make it from the format that had worked for 20 plus years, 4-part stories, 6-part stories, half hour each, which fit together into a movie-length episode, to hour-long, more or less standalone episodes?
Well, I think it was to do, in the old days we used to have one producer. It was either right or wrong, and I don't mean it was dictatorial, but it was slightly. Now we've got committees, and as you know with committees, somebody says, oh, why don't we do this, why don't we do that? It doesn't work. The best producers I've ever known, like UFO producer and various other people.
Jerry Anderson?
Sorry?
Jerry Anderson?
Yes, Jerry Anderson. Yeah, you see, I think Doctor Who, when it started in '63, I never thought that, well, I got into it, 36 years ago. I never thought it'd be going this long. I thought it was a marvellous show, but there again, it was less sophisticated than it is now. I think there's too much CGI, whatever you call it, computer-generated things going on now, and it's lost a lot of humour. I saw Peter Capaldi in one episode of Robin Hood, I think it was Robin Hood, and it was very funny, and I said to my wife, this is where it should have got back to, that the humour seems to have gone out of it. And all right, I know a lot of sets fell over and things like that, but in the old days, it seemed to be better. I worked with, well, now it's a different story. I'll tell you a story later about working with Troughton on a radio when he finished it. Anyway, I'm sorry, off to you.
And I guess, obviously, I can't really remember because I wouldn't have been very old, but obviously I guess there's possibly a scheduling thing where were they 20 minutes, the episodes?
The earlier ones were, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously like a scheduling thing generally is half hour or hour, but then obviously from a commercial point of view, especially when it comes over to the States, so a 46-minute episode of Doctor Who then becomes an hour. So
45 minutes
to your question, I'm not sure. If only there was a device that you can actually ask, and it will answer these things. But I guess the thing is probably, you know, most things are done either half-hour or hour shows.
Sure.
So probably 20 minutes that 20 minutes would mean that something else would have to be 20 and 20 or 40.
Right.
Yeah, because I know they had to add things for the States, otherwise they wouldn't accept them, and they added things where we've got more repeats. If they wanted to repeat it, you had to add, because I don't know why. It had to be longer in the States for some reason.
I think part of this too, and again, it's nice to be in a room full of experts on Doctor Who, but from the basics that I understand is JNT was really trying to push Doctor Who into the United States, or being an international show, not just being something just for the BBC and those environments. So if you change it and you ship it out, there's a little bit more, it fits into a different time slot. So that might be possible. Wasn't looking into the direct history of the length of episodes, but again, more homework for you if you want to look up Barbara Shelley. Why the time change, right? Do you have another one?
Yes, also in the classic series, they went more into depth into the characters, like Ace and other characters give more of a background story. They went deeper into the characters.
Just as far as scripts are concerned?
Yes, and their past details.
Actually, that's an interesting question too. Did you see any kind of change the way that the scripts were handled? The difference between, say, today, before the 80s, during the 80s, did that change at any level? I know it's a little trickier when you're in suits and blocking becomes such a big important part that they seem to be skipping over.
Yeah.
But as far as just when you're getting the scripts before the 80s, how has that changed over time?
I think the scripts actually have got much better. When I did Trial of a Time Lord, I mean, John Nathan Turner and Colin Baker and various people were having rows with Lord Grade and, not Lord, but yes, Lord Grade and various of Powell and people. I didn't have anything to do with it, but it was awful. And some of the scripts, the big finished scripts to me, were better than most of the script I was doing on the Trial of a Time Lord. And the scripts now, Tennant's scripts were marvellous, I thought. Now, I'm not so sure. It's got more, with Matt
Smith.
Baker,
Smith.
whatever his name is.
Smith.
Matt Smith,
The 11th Doctor.
It got a bit too clever because the same writer was doing the Sherlock Holmes. And so, with Tom Baker, with humour, it would be, he'd have pauses in time, and Matt Smith used to go, oh, and I thought that was funny. But they thought they were being clever, so they'd cut to something else. With humour, you've got to have time to laugh. With Matt Smith, and he was good, don't get me wrong, but the scripts, I think, generally got better and better and better until the last series with Jodie Whittaker. That's only my opinion, but I may be wrong. I'm sorry, go on.
I totally agree. I don't know, because I never watched Doctor Who very often as a child, but then obviously knew that it was there and it was on. Yes, the first episode it was very dark. It was very dark, and it's a wonder we got away with some of the things, because I was threatening this guy with a knife and trying to pour whiskey down his throat and everything. And that was a children's show. It was on 5 o'clock on a Saturday evening, and